Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to make your site truly interactive by learning how to use event listeners. These let your JavaScript code respond to user actions like clicking on a button, typing in a field, or hovering over an element. By the end of this video, you'll know how to react to clicks and keyboard inputs, use the event object, and build a tiny to-do app from scratch. Let's get started. Now, an event listener in JavaScript tells your code when the user does something, run this function. You can think of this as click a button, run a task. Typing in a field, update the screen. Hover over something, change styles. We use addEventListener to make all of that happen. Now in Visual Studio Code, I have multiple examples I want to go through with you. And the first one here is a straightforward example of a button that says click me. It's just some boilerplate HTML with a button with an ID of click me. And we're linking out to an external JavaScript sheet. If we hop into that JavaScript, we're going to see some items here that I want to go through. First, we're capturing that button and we're using getElementById. That's a method where you can perform an action. Within here, we are grabbing the ID of click me, and that comes from here, this ID click me. And something to note is we are not pulling the button from the HTML straight from this page. We're pulling it in the document object model, in the DOM. So after the page loads in the browser, we are essentially working with the live version of that page in the DOM. And so that's what we're grabbing. We're grabbing that element, but it's, within the DOM. Now, the other thing is we're now using button.addEventListener. This is something new. It's also a method for elements, and it has two parts to it. It has the event, which is in this case a click, and then it has a callback, which in this case is just an anonymous function that we're using. And within this callback, we're just running an alert, a message in the browser that says you click the button. And we'll get to this next part really quickly. But we can go ahead and take a look at this. If we click on the button, click me, we see that alert take place. And I want to dive into this a little bit more so we understand it. So when you run addEventListener, this method, you are using or working with an event object. So this click event is linked to an event object, and we can actually see that event in the console. So what happens is if we run this again, we're going to get this alert, but we're also going to get an object in the console, and we can go ahead and take a look at this. And we see this pointer event. If we expand it, we see exactly what's going on here. Here is all the details about this event, and it's what makes possible dynamic, websites that react based on, user actions. And so there's a couple things we can take a look at here. For one, we've got items here, properties more specifically, that we can work with. So one of those is target, for instance, event.target. So the same way that you interact with properties and methods normally, with starting with the name of the object, followed by a period, followed by the method or property name, it's the same here. So event.target. Here is essentially what element was clicked. Well, it was a button with the ID of click me. We also have the type, which is what kind of event happened. Well, it was a click event. And there's a lot more. So, you can get into if you're using a keyboard event, it's, what key was pressed. So a lot of details are found in this event object when you're working with them within your JavaScript. So this is really important and useful for us. And we can see that in some other examples as we go into it. Now, the next example I have is with a box with an ID of, or a div with an ID of box, and it has some inline styles just to essentially make this box, visible to us, and also the color gray, which we can see in the browser. Now, the thing here is we have linked to that JavaScript sheet like normal, and if we hop into that sheet, there's a couple things that are happening here. We're using getElementById like always to capture that ID to be able to use this div in our JavaScript. And then we're using event listeners. Now, instead of the click event, there are other types of events you could take advantage of. And some of those are mouse over and mouse out. And so what we're doing here is when the user hovers their mouse over the box, we're changing the color to green. And then when you hover out of the box, we're changing it back to that gray. And this box.style is an inline style property. And if we go back to the browser and hover, you'll see it's green and then turns to the gray. This is, This type of, triggering could be useful for a tooltip, a button, or an interactive menu that you want to adapt based on a user's action. Next, we have a typing event example, and it's a little bit more, advanced in terms of, the prior examples. And we have a couple more items here. We have an input field, and we have an empty paragraph. So the input field is the type of text that's just a standard, what type? It's just a straightforward input field. We're using an ID to use later in JavaScript, and then the placeholders to be able to see this field in the browser with, the text type your name. Underneath, we won't be able to see this in the browser, but it's an empty paragraph with an ID of greeting. And we want to essentially, when someone types their name, we want to give them a greeting as they're typing. And then we're linking back to our JavaScript here. So let's take a look first in the browser, see what we got here. We have type your name, it's a field. Underneath, we have this greeting we want to show to users. Now, what you're going to do is, if we hop into the JavaScript, you're going to see that we have, for one, we are grabbing the input field by its ID. We're grabbing the paragraph by its ID. That's been the same. And then we got the addEventListener. So once you get the element into your JavaScript, you can start to use it or work with it. And then in this case, we're using the input event. So again, there are multiple types, not just click events. We can take advantage of an input event specifically for inputs. And here we are updating the greeting element, the paragraph with the ID of greeting, with some text. And with that text, we want to update that paragraph, which is currently empty without any text. We want to essentially give it a text node of hello, followed by whatever the user types, which is input.value. Whatever value within the input field, we want to add that to the text. And we can see that here. If we type our name, we say Matt, we get back hello Matt. And you'll see that's updating dynamically like so. And so that also can be something you might find useful. And it's great for, live search, previews, or form validation. Now, one thing I really quickly want to mention is you also, instead of writing these anonymous functions, which is what we've been doing already, you also can, right here, you also can use named functions. So we have a function say hi. Instead of putting the function straight within the event listener method, we can go ahead and write it directly, say hi, and refer to that function outside here. That's another option. And there's benefits to that. For one, it can be a little bit cleaner for you, but it also allows you to use remove event listener. And this allows you to, remove that event listener from that element if you so choose to. And you might be asking why exactly, what's the benefit of removing event listener in the first place? Well, for one, it's to stop something from running more than once, to clean up unused code, and to improve performance. So think of it just as a performance enhancer. When you're done with something, you don't need to have it anymore, so might as well get rid of it. And so that's what you can do here. Just keep in mind, this is only for named functions, not anonymous functions. Okay. Now, as a final example, I wanted to provide something a bit more practical so we can, take this and really solidify it. Now, what we have here is a to-do list, and this to-do list is going to allow us to strike through tasks that we've completed and remove tasks if we don't want it in our list anymore. We can add them, strike through them, and remove them. So here we have our HTML, and we have a few additional items to expand on what we've already learned. So we have the input field, we have the button, and we have the list. So the three things that we need to make this work: the input field to type what our task is, the button to add it to our list, and then the list itself. And then we're linking to our JavaScript to start working with this. So as you know, the first step in this is to pull all of those elements. So add task, task input, and task. That's the top part. And before we go to the rest, this part, let's first look at what we're seeing in the browser. We have the field, we have the add button, and underneath we have the unordered list. Now let's hop into this code and understand it a bit more. So we have the add button element, And we're essentially, with the add button, we want to attach an event listener because once someone clicks on add, we want to do something. And the thing we want to do is we want to add a list item to our unordered list, which is currently empty. We want that list item to contain a remove button to be able to remove list items. And then we want to have the capability of striking through tasks that we complete if we want to. And so all of that's in this code, and I want to break it down. Now, the first part here is if taskinput.value.trim is equal to an empty string, then just return. And this is essentially saying, we don't want spaces showing up in our list. If someone's just typing spaces or it's just empty, go ahead and return it. So this trim is cutting down the spaces. And if it's, if it's an empty string, if it's equivalent to that, then we want to, do nothing basically. So that's that first step. Now, if it's an actually text that we want to deal with, then we're going to go ahead and create a list element. We have unordered list. In your HTML, typically you would put list elements within your unordered list. And so that's what we're doing here, just in JavaScript. We're doing document.createElement. That's a method. That's an action we're doing to create that list item. And we are storing it in a variable called list. Now, once we create the element, we want to add some text. And like we mentioned, there are nodes in the DOM. You have different types of nodes, from the element nodes and also the text nodes. And we want to add a text node within this element. And so what we're doing is list.textContent is, assigned to whatever the value is within the input field. And that's the same as the prior example. We just accessed that .value property. So once you have that value, put it in a list, and then we are setting the value to an empty string to reset this for any additional tasks we want to add. Moving farther down, now that we have the list item, well, we've created it, we added some content. Now we want to, give it the functionality to strike through it if we've completed that task. So it's a bit more useful to us. And so what we're doing is addEventListener on click on the element. It's not added yet, but we're going to. But when it's added and added to the list, we want to go ahead and strike through it. And so we have this callback, and we are setting the style, text decoration, an inline style. We want to basically use this ternary operator where we are saying, if they click on it, we want to do a strike through. Otherwise, remove the strike through and just have it empty. So the text decoration is either going to be set to an empty string or it's going to be a line through. It will give us the option to strike through it or not strike through it based on the click. Perfect. Now that we have the list item, we're going to eventually add that to the unordered list. It's currently not, there. It's just, within our JavaScript that we're working with. But before we do that, we want to add the remove button. So like we talked about, every list item is going to have a remove button, and we want to add that. And so what we're going to do is, same as the list item up top here, .createElement, we're creating another element, but this time it's going to be a button instead of a list element. And so we're doing createElement button, storing it in remove button variable. We're giving it some text, same as before up top here, but this time we're just going to say it's remove. We want to give it a little bit of styles to look right. So we're doing an inline style of margin left for some spacing there. And then we're going to add the event listener to remove. And that's, same as the add button where we added the, functionality for click up top, add button, add event listener click. We also want to add a click to the remove button. And we say essentially, when we click on this remove button, we want to remove the list item. So it's list.remove. Now, because this remove button is a child element to list, we're going to be attaching it down below here. Because it's a child to list, it's within the list item, we have to use event or e.stopPropagation. And essentially this, prevents, the essentially event bubbling because it's a child. And we want to avoid, triggering the strike through action up here. Because there's an event listener on the list, and because this is a child, they could conflict with one another and cause this bubbling. And so we don't want that. So we're just doing e.stopPropagation. And that's what that is. We remove the list item and we're all set. So we have all the logic up top. Now the final step is just to add both of these to our DOM so we can start using them. And so what we're doing here is, on the click of add, we are attaching first we're attaching the remove button to the list item. So now they're linked, they're together. The remove button is a child to list. And then we're attaching the list item to the unordered list with the ID of tasks. So this is to attach the remove button. This is to attach the list to the unordered list, which is currently empty. And now we can actually, check this out. And so what we're doing here is we can say, learn JavaScript. We can add it, and you'll see that it gets added. We talked about the strike through. Click is the strike through. Unclick, it's that empty string. So now it's removed. We can remove an item, learn JavaScript, and it gets rid of it. And then we can add some more just to show you. We can add multiple. So we can say, learn event listeners. We can say this as well. And we can check these off, remove them, and we're good to go. And that's it for event listeners in JavaScript. If you found this video helpful, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next tutorial. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.